Hello everyone, welcome to Coffee Break. My name's Steve Barrett. I'm the editorial director of PR Week, and we have a great guest this week. We've got Kate Ryan, who's an MD at Diffusion PR, and is going to talk to us about DTC marketing. So Kate, welcome to Coffee Break. Good to see you.
Hi Steve, thanks for having me.
Before we start, just tell us a little bit about Diffusion. Originally a British agency, but you've got 25 folks in the US now, and you've been here for 8 or 9 years, I think. So just give us the sort of elevator sell for Diffusion PR.
Yeah, so Diffusion's a PR agency. We were originally out of London, came to New York almost 9 years ago, and then opened our LA office a few years ago as well. So now we have our 3 offices. We really focus on a wide variety of clients doing something innovative. We love to work with clients who are challenging the status quo in some way, who want to do something crazy or creative. But we really talk about bringing tomorrow closer. Like, what are the brands that are going to do that? And that's where our sweet spot is.
Do you focus on tech brands for that, or is it brands across the board, consumer as well?
Yeah, consumer as well. And I think that that actually segues really nicely into direct to consumer, because I would say in many ways, the direct to consumer companies in the consumer space are the ones really challenging that status quo and doing, I think, what will be very unique and have staying power in the future for how we shop.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because you do an annual DTC Index and some really interesting findings. And the market's maturing, I guess. DTC was a buzzword, wasn't it, for a number of years? And maybe you don't hear so much about it now, but maybe that's just because it's matured. But firstly, tell us about the index and what that showed this past year. And obviously, an unusual year because second year of pandemic and shopping habits were no doubt affected by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've been running this report for the past 4 years. And when we started it in 2018, I think it was 4 in 10 Americans wanted to buy direct consumer. People barely knew what direct consumer really meant. It was still absolutely a buzzword, something, maybe a little unique. You might buy one thing from, a random direct consumer company. And then during the pandemic, we saw that really skyrocket. It went up to 7 in 10 Americans were buying from direct consumer. And I think the pandemic in some ways really spurred a lot of adoption of direct consumer brands, because going online and buying was what we were all doing in our pajamas late at night. So,
There was a lot of that, wasn't there?
exactly. So I think that was very exciting. But what was really surprising to me in our latest iteration of this report was that there was a dip in interest for the first time since we've been running the report. And I think that really speaks to the competition in the landscape, as well as the supply chain issues, frankly, that a lot of direct consumer companies are facing, and that frustration I think consumers have started to find.
Yeah, good points about that. And I think you also found that people were kind of put off by influencers. That's really interesting. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we had been hearing that from some of our clients. And so we wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that. And I think what has happened is really an oversaturation of the influencer marketing space. You're just getting bombarded by influencer marketing. So brands are finding it really hard to break through. So what we saw was, that 1 in 4 Americans actually said they would not buy something if they saw it from an influencer, which is pretty crazy. And I think it was something like, over 60% said it wouldn't influence them either way. So while I definitely think influencer marketing is here to stay, and there are great ways to do it, brands really need to think, I think, a little bit harder about where they put that money and really vet the influencers they work with. Because it's not as novel, I think, as it used to be to the consumer. So they're a little bit savvier to what they're seeing.
Is that a sort of example of the maturation of that market as well, in that, we've seen stories of influencers which turned out maybe to be not as credible, or got into trouble, or killed themselves on social, which anyone can do. So it's really what the lesson from that is, I guess, and what you're advising your clients is you've got to be very savvy about the type of influencers you work with.
Yep, that's exactly it. You got to really vet them, make sure that they really align with the brand. And then also the way I think you do it matters. I think people have also become a little bit tired of the mass influencer push on the same day, like it looks a little bit, staged. So I think finding a really authentic way to do it is really important.
Yeah, when we've surveyed influencers, they always say they'll only work with brands that are totally on on their wavelength and that they
Right.
genuinely buy into, and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah. But if they place a lot of money in front of you, you're gonna do it. And you kind of, everyone was saying the same thing. So I think you've got to just dig a bit deeper, haven't you? And that's where agencies like yourselves come in, presumably. How are you using this index and research to help advise clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the influencer marketing side, we're absolutely putting in, more guardrails on influencer marketing, really thinking about if it makes sense. And then on the PR side, I think when you think about this report, there's so much room for differentiation for D2C companies, and PR is just such a good way to do it. So really trying to break through, get through the competitive side. I think make a connection with the customer so that yes, you might get your product delayed, or yes, we might be out of stock on this, but I really love this brand and I've seen them in so many ways and I've connected with them in so many ways that I'm willing to give them a little bit of a pass.
Tell us a bit about DTC as a phrase, as a definition, and has that evolved? Because if we think about, a lot of mainstream brands are now becoming
Mhm.
D2C as well, aren't they? So you
Yeah.
might buy, I don't know, Nike from your store, from a Nike store or from another retailer, but you might also order direct. So
Yeah.
how do we define DTC these days, and how has that evolved over the years?
Yeah, I think that's the never-ending debate in the D2C community because in some ways I think it's like digital first companies who really prioritize that. I mean, at one point, I think Pepsi was trying to call themselves a D2C company because they were selling Pepsi online that you could grab yourself. But I really think it's about a class of company that prioritizes e-commerce. And one of the things we've seen a lot of physical retailers or legacy retailers do, especially during the pandemic, is start to do that, and that's why I think also we've seen this dip in the numbers in that consumers are finding that same benefit in those long-term legacy retailers that they used to find in D2C companies.
Tell us about the shopping habits and where they're hanging out. We hear a lot about e-commerce and social commerce. So Facebook, I've bought a lot more via Facebook, I
Mhm.
think, especially in the lockdown, like you mentioned. What trends are you seeing in those areas in terms of the best places for D2C brands to hang out to sell their goods?
Yeah, I actually think what we're seeing is a lot of affiliate marketing. So when a publisher will, partner to feature a product, or they may already be featuring a product, more consumers are buying direct from media straight to, purchase. So I think that that has been a trend we've seen really explode over, in the past few years. I think it's something publishers have done pretty well.
Yeah. Was there anything else that came out of the study that was noteworthy and that maybe had changed in the 4 years? And I'm thinking specifically of, things that have changed in lockdown, particularly.
Yeah, I think one thing, it may seem out of date, but we issued it right, in the November timeframe and saw people were saying we're not going to buy a lot from D2C companies for the holidays. And we were shocked because, typically holiday time period is a really huge retail season for these brands. And it was proven to be true. We saw it, in the numbers from some of our clients because it just became such a competitive retail season, and big box retailers are cutting their prices, D2C companies are cutting their prices, so it's just more competition than ever before. And I think that for a D2C brand to stand out and really get those consumer dollars, it is about, what is your campaign months before, what amazing review do you have running of your product that's really timed well for that time period. So it was a bit surprising to see that holiday wasn't going to be such a huge time for them, but we were able to help prepare those clients and really focus on other moments.
Yeah, if you think of Thanksgiving, Black Friday, you
Mhm.
think of Giving Tuesday, you think of Cyber Monday. I mean, is Cyber Monday even a thing anymore? Because it kind of smacks of older thinking where
Yeah.
when digital was really new and when it was unusual to buy online. But now everyone's buying online, aren't they? We're getting our groceries, we're getting everything delivered at home.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what we saw. I think the supply chain issues also forced people to buy much earlier than even Cyber Monday. So I think that that just changed the game at the end of the last year. And some of that is, of course, pandemic driven.
What habits do you think will persist then post-pandemic, which hopefully we're getting to the to that stage now, although we can't take anything for granted. What shopping habits have changed forever, and what things might sort of revert a little bit because people, want to get back to I mean, I hate shopping personally, but I know that there are millions of people who absolutely love it and, like getting out there and physically shopping.
Yeah. I think we're just going to see so much continued e-commerce, interest. I think if you look at the results of this report over the past few years, the D2C brands have absolutely matured. And yes, while we saw a dip, I think that general interest is here to stay. I also think retailers who used to be just brick and mortar figured out e-commerce during the pandemic. I have a client who doubled down on it, invested a ton of money in overhauling their whole e-commerce system, and they're seeing huge gains there as well. So to me, I think we're always going to shop for a lot of this stuff online. I'm a person who I don't know that I'll ever go into a grocery store again because I figured out how to do all of that online during the pandemic, and it's amazing. It's convenient, it's fantastic. Why would I go back? I'm always shocked. We work with a lot of furniture companies in the D2C space. People will buy thousands of dollars in a sofa without ever having seen it. So, I think that a lot of that, as far as consumer habits, has really changed, and that people have a lot more trust in e-commerce than ever before.
Yeah, people buying cars, people buying all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff online, and we wouldn't have been able to survive without Fresh Direct in our neighborhoods. They were the real heroes, weren't they? Essential workers out there every day, all the way through, and hopefully everyone was tipping them much more than usual when they were doing that. So yeah, for sure. Just to finish off, tell us a bit about how life has been for Diffusion. During this time, you've got 25 folks. Presume you're still at home by the looks of it.
Yeah.
What do you think that's going to develop into this year, and how are you getting a new sort of hybrid working environment for the future of PR, because it's a talent business and you want to keep your best people?
Absolutely. And I think we really embraced remote working. We put a ton of time and energy into it at the very beginning of the pandemic to make it feel like we were all still together. We spent a lot of time looking at our tech and tools that would help us do that. Because I think at the end of the day, collaboration is so key to this business. Like the best, craziest ideas come out of those ridiculous, conversations in the office. So we've tried to replicate that online as much as we can. That said, we have our offices in New York and LA. People do go into them. We're hopeful we'll be back into them at some point, in the near future. But I think it's really about everyone having the flexibility to work in the way that they want, especially as things are so, crazy and no one can predict what's going to happen next. Having 2 kids, I have no idea when they'll be in school or not in school. So making sure that every employee has that flexibility has been really key.
Yeah, everyone's battling with it, and let's just hope we're all back at least able to go out a bit more, because it was when the masks started appearing on the streets again, it was like, oh no, we're back in it. But yeah, well, it's great to catch up with you, Kate. Thanks for joining us on Coffee Break and chatting to us about DTC. Really fascinating stuff, and continued good wishes and good luck to Diffusion.
Thanks so much.